The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson.
All right, good morning, Las Vegas. And good morning, Raider Nation around the world. We appreciate you listening here. Welcome to the only All Raiders show on the air in the City of Lights. Of course, that is the city of Las Vegas, Nevada. Yes, warming up fast. I love it. You're listening to CBS Sports Radio 1140. I'm your host, Scott Gulbranson, founder and publisher of silverandblacktoday.com. We have an amazing show for you today with a lineup second to none. And riding along with me, as always, are my two co-hosts, the guys who make having enemies no big deal, with friends like these who needs enemies. First, we go to our Indiana, not Kentucky, our Indiana native, and that is Mr. Kelly Kreiner. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing good, and I'm doing much better than you were last week. We have to share with people. I mean, if you listened to the show last week, Kelly was here, and he had a migraine. And anybody who suffers from migraines know how bad they can be. Tell your eye story from work.
Where I couldn't see out of my right eye.
And what the patron said to you.
Yeah,
he's a Raider. Put a patch on that thing.
That's right.
I go into work, and I'm just sitting there, and I mean, I like I said, massive headache, and I'm just sitting there. A guy comes up and looks at me. He's like, "Someone poke you in the eye?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Your right eye." He goes, "It's swollen. It looks like somebody poked you in the eye." Some dude I've never met. Some dude was like, "I got a really bad headache." I was like, "I can't see anything on my right." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You look like it." Like,
oh, you're like, "Thanks for the compliment, man." Right? That's well, yeah. But we're glad you're feeling better today and are 100%. But of course, you were a gamer last week when you came in, so we appreciate that as well. And also joining us is the man who was paid for 14 years to watch basketball, if you really think about it that way.
Not a bad
for a living as a scout with the Los Angeles Lakers, the one, the only, our pretty boy.
Oh.
Our pretty boy, Chaz Osborne. What's up, man?
Wow. No one ever comes in and tells me my eyes are puffy.
Are you sure? Is that because you put the cucumbers, right?
Absolutely.
Are you a cucumber guy?
Daily
cucumbers. Really? No, I know. I'm just kidding. All good.
All good, man. All good.
But you're here, and your hair is perfectly coiffed as usual. All right. So we are going to go through the show and let you know what's happening. Just a reminder, we are streaming today's show worldwide on radio.com app. If you know someone in Raider Nation and they're looking for a show that covers the silver and black with some objectivity and professionalism, tell them to download the app and join us every Sunday. The best music, talking sports, anywhere, live, right on their smartphone. Get the radio.com app. If you're more visual and rather watch us, and Kelly's eye is not huge and swollen. So
it's safe to watch. It's safe to watch this.
No more than usual at 8 o'clock in the morning.
It's family friendly today. You can watch us on our simulcast on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope. On Twitter, of course, and you come right in the studio. There's also, that's where the best chat happens, actually, guys. We have great listeners and viewers, and they get on there, and we mix it up with them. It's a lot of fun, so come join us there as well. If you're, in addition, make sure to read the website that started all, silverandblacktoday.com, a story there. Chaz did a story on Coach Gruden and what he was talking about at the owners' meeting, and we'll go over that a little bit later. Okay, let's set topics on the table for you now. And what's ahead on today's show. The Raiders continue to be the story of the offseason, of course. And Mike Mayock and John Gruden got out the wallet again, guys, signing this week former Broncos linebacker and Las Vegas native Brandon Marshall, former Jets running back Isaiah Crowell, and former Detroit Lion tight end Luke Wilson to deals. We'll talk about those signings and what they mean for the Silver and Black later in the summer when they hit camp and, of course, around the draft. In our first hour, we put the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory camp in their place as we welcome assistant business editor of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Rick Velotta, with a stadium update. Velotta will tell us how ridiculous these rumors. I mean, they just continue to go out there. And as we'll talk about with him, it's not coming from Las Vegas. He'll also tell us about the latest on the hotel tax take, the money that's helping pay for the stadium. Velotta will also tell us how the Raiders are using some really cool high-tech stuff to build the stadium like no other project in history. Just an outstanding interview you won't want to miss. That's coming up after the next break. Then later in the first hour, we get to brass tacks on Raiders draft targets with the one and only Czar of the Playbook, and that, of course, is Emery Hunt. Emery from footballgameplan.com, one of the best in the biz. Scouting, evaluating. He'll recap pro days from last week and tell us what he thinks the Raiders might do in next month's NFL draft. Later in the show, we talk Raiders on television, not about broadcasters, not about guys who were fired or replaced. Instead, we're going to talk about could the 25-year lock that DirecTV has had on NFL Sunday Ticket be coming to an end?
Whoa.
Which I think would be actually good for everybody. We'll hear from Ryan Young from Yahoo Sports, who did a story on this. He's been covering it. Might you be able to watch Raider games no matter where you are in the country? Maybe. Right? So we're going to talk in depth about that and talk
Raider
about
Nation.
It is Raider
They
Nation.
need to see it.
Got to be able to see it, right?
Global Nation.
Global.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we'll talk to him about that. He'll tell us the latest on how the league may finally make a move to ensure fans can watch their team no matter where they live and how they want. All that and more, including your phone calls. That's an important piece. Make sure you give us a call, 702-889-5978. Be our fourth host. Don't be shy. Show some guts and call us, 702-889-5978. There you have it, Raider Nation. Up to date. We've set topics on the table, and we are ready to roll. All right, guys. So a lot of news this week, and I know we're going to cover it out throughout the show. The signings, we're going to get into that after our interview with Rick. But there was the NFL owners meeting. Chaz, you wrote a story on the website about Coach Gruden and what he had to say in his kind of press gaggle. Yeah. And nothing surprising, except how do you guys feel about the new instant replay rules?
I like it because, I mean, we saw that the Saints basically not only did the NFL take away a chance for them to go to the Super Bowl, probably win one.
Yep.
When you look at just how bad that game was, I'm assuming that the Drew Brees-led Saints could have scored 14 or more points in a Super Bowl.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's freaking out about how it's going to increase the game time and everything. It's going to be quicker to call a pass interference than a catch.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a more obvious call.
Right.
There's less nuance that's going to be in there. Because with pass interference, it's either, a pass it's a kind of obvious where it's not, where the catch is, did he get feet down? Where's he at? Did he make
ball move?
Yeah. So, I'm not worried about the length of the game. I want the damn call to be right.
But I'm not sure how long are they talking about, how many reviews each coach allowed to get? Is it the same as the
My understanding
challenge
it's the
flag?
same as the regular system. It's going to be a challenge flag.
Right.
It's going to be a challenge flag, and then, of course, the pass interference and judgment calls, some of those judgment calls that were not allowed to be reviewed in the past, like the pass interference and others, too. It's, it's
the game right.
Yeah, I think you want to get it right, and I think that's one of the issues we're going to talk about when we talk about the NFL and marketing is the NFL has been so focused on growth, like, for example, talking about moving a team to London. I think they should be less focused on profitability. I mean, they're already profitable, they're by far, but they need to focus on improving the game, and improving the game is improving the officiating, guys.
Yep.
I mean, that's the bottom line. We've seen it. It's steadily gotten worse, which is why, I mean, the replay rules, I think even if the officiating was really, really good, would still be a good move. But the fact that they're now addressing this is good because that's where fans' frustration comes in, and like what you saw in New Orleans. So it'll be interesting to say what happened. What did you like about what Coach Gruden said down in Phoenix, Chaz?
Oh, he was finally, he's finally open, and we're so used to those Grudenisms, right? He's, smash mouth, and all out effort, and this guy eats glass for breakfast. That's usually all you hear from Gruden. So this time, he was pretty candid about, the players and the direction, and it's typical. Gruden's really not. He'll sit down for a 5-minute interview, and he won't give out any information. He's great at that. So this time, it was nice for him to give us a few tidbits of what we got to look forward to next season.
It was, but Kelly, I didn't hear anything from him that surprised me. I mean, he poured it on a little sweet with Jared Cook. They were never going to sign him, and made it sound like he was it's terrible, he's leaving. I didn't buy that. I think he was playing TV guy there.
No, yeah, I do too. And I don't, this time of year, it's always the running joke. I don't believe anything anybody says in the NFL. In May, I'll start believing stuff in May again.
Right.
But until rosters and everything are really set, I don't believe it.
And you're angling for the draft, too. You don't want to tilt your hand. You got to keep your cards close to the vest.
Do you wear vests?
Not
when
lately.
you're playing poker, right?
Everybody who plays poker wears a vest.
It has to be. It has to be.
Everybody that plays poker wears a hoodie or a T-shirt.
I know.
What are you talking about? Nobody
And
gets all
headphones.
fancy for
Headphones.
Yeah.
No, and sunglasses, right? You have to watch sunglasses. You can't let people see your eyes.
That's right.
Are most guys tells in their eye, though? I mean, is that where you play poker, Chaz? You play tournaments and all that stuff?
Yeah, I do. No, they're not in their eyes. I usually
Tap,
look at
tap,
betting.
tap, tap, or something?
Yeah, they're betting. The way they start betting and they go all in. They got nothing.
All right. This first part of the show has gone by really quick. So, again, we're going to come up after the break. We're going to be introducing and interviewing Rick Velotta. He's the assistant business editor over at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and he's going to talk to us about the stadium. Now, you heard these ridiculous reports, and I have to call out, I mean, again, I'm respectful to all other members of the media, especially national media folks. They worked hard to get there. But Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk, which is owned by NBC, put out an inaccurate story saying that the stadium was going to be delayed based on a tweet from Rick that then was followed right after it by a tweet that had the correct information. And when notified of it, just decided not to change it. So that's the kind of stuff where, we'll talk to Rick. He's going to give us the whole story on how that happened last week at the Stadium Advisory Board meeting and why people thought the stadium was going to be delayed by 4 or 5 days, which it's not. So don't go anywhere because we'll have that as well for you, and you don't want to miss it. And he'll talk about the hotel tax and everything else that's happening with the stadium. So you're going to get a really in-depth stadium story right from the source, right from here in Las Vegas. You're listening to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
Celebrate
Four-Town Pro Bowl, and you'll listen to the Silver and Black Show.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. The stadium, the favorite subject of all of our listeners, of course. The excitement continues to build for 2020 when the Raiders will move to Las Vegas and play their games in a brand spanking new stadium right down by Russell Road and the I-15. And there's no one who's written about that stadium more than the man that I'm about to talk to. Joining us now is the assistant business editor at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Rick Velotta. Rick, thanks for joining us here on Silver and Black Today.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so the stadium, this past week, of course, we had another Las Vegas Stadium Advisory Board meeting. Give us a little bit of the kind of the headlines out of that meeting. Of course, there was one big one I'll let you get into, but talk a little bit about what we learned about the current state of the project and where it's going.
Well, the current state is that it's on time and on budget, and this is something that's been emphasized by the Raiders through their subsidiary company that is actually building the $1.8 billion stadium. These meetings of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority are now occurring like every couple of months, and generally they're basically just updates on the progress of the stadium construction. And that was the meat of the meeting this last week. But as you pointed out, this was a meeting that actually had a couple of surprises attached to them. Yeah,
and the first one we'll talk about clearly was one that you were deeply involved in because national media apparently watches your Twitter feed, and it's pretty good because if you want good news and quick news, you can definitely follow Rick on Twitter. But Pro Football Talk said, "Oh, the stadium's delayed." 4 days, they kind of made fun of it, and they put your tweet in the story saying that you had said it was delayed. Not so.
Yeah, not quite. And I think initially that was what was expected, and that was what was reported accurately, I might add, by me. But then the whole circumstances and the explanation of what actually happened shifted the entire course of the meeting. And I can get into some of those details, Scott, if you like. Basically, what happened was that there are two monitors. One is hired by the Raiders, one is hired by the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, that kind of keep a watch on what that they're delivering everything that they say they're delivering. They actually have reports that they issue that explain that what the Raiders are saying in terms of their progress reports are accurate. So one of the monitors on this is the one that actually oversees on behalf of the Raiders, issued a report prior to the meeting starting that said, by the way, the stadium is being delayed by 5 days to August the 4th from the original date of July 31st, 2020. And, of course, I caught that right away, and it was reported by Jeremy Aguero, who's kind of the coordinator of all things involved with the stadium. He actually reported the change to August 4th. But in reality, it turns out that completion date of August 4th is not accurate. It's still July 31st, 2020, as initially reported by the Raiders, and has been part of what they have been saying every day since they first began starting the stadium project.
Right, and you have covered this issue so well and always accurate. When we read your stuff, there's never any question about it. But there is, for whatever reason, Rick, there's still folks. It seems not to be the stadium opponents in the state of Nevada, because they kind of have moved on for the most part. I'm sure they're watching to make sure that the money's going where it's supposed to and all that stuff, and you do a great job of reporting that. But it seems to me that a lot of this kind of conjecture and jumping to conclusions based on facts and half facts and innuendo is really coming from out of state. Do you see that as well?
I do. I think a lot of the blog posts that I've seen that have kind of relished in the delay aspect of this, they kind of came out in force saying, "Oh, see, this is a big problem, and this is only the first part of it." But I think your perception's right, Scott. I think that a lot of this is being generated from out of state. There are people who still haven't gotten past the idea that the Raiders are moving to Las Vegas from Oakland. And frankly, they delight in seeing problems as the stadium is being built.
Yeah, and we clearly hear and a lot from Raider fans outside of Las Vegas, because it's a big contingent. Raider Nation, as they call it, is obviously a huge national and international kind of group of fans. But clearly, yeah, that's definitely, I think, what we're starting to see. And I get it; it's emotional. You lose your team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if a team were ripped out from under me in my hometown, I'd be a little bit upset about it myself. And we're talking NFL, and the Raiders is a pretty storied franchise. So I understand why. I just, have a hard time dealing with why people get grips with it eventually. And they can still be fans of the team even if they're in Las Vegas.
No, that's true. And as I've said to you before, this democratization of quote unquote media has been so great for our society, but then you also see the downside of it when we see kind of factual information twisted and taken for whatever purpose, and then it becomes non-factual and we get into trouble there. Now, the other thing at the stadium meeting too that is of interest, and we got some more good news, which is around the hotel tax. There's a little bit of a surplus there, isn't there?
There is, and I think this speaks pretty well to some of the financial experts who initially projected some of these things. They projected how much money was going to be raised by this 0.88% addition to the hotel tax. And the most recent report, which is basically from the start, which was March 2 years ago to January, indicates that there's about a 0.6% surplus in terms of what was expected. So that translates into about $500,000. So $500,000 more in hotel tax revenue has been collected than what they anticipated. Now, I think that's actually pretty astonishing, considering the fact that we've had a downturn that occurred as a result of the October 1 shooting. In the months immediately following that, October, November, December, tourism numbers were down because of the fact that I think people were not of the mindset of wanting to come and celebrate in Las Vegas simply because of the tragedy that had occurred across the street from Mandalay Bay. So that being a part of the entire equation, I think it's pretty remarkable that the total that's been collected in taxes to date is ahead of what they expected it to be. And it speaks to the expertise that was involved. And obviously the people who thought that the tax rate wasn't high enough were wrong on this.
It's remarkable, actually, to your point, because I know a lot of the criticism when this was all being voted upon was around that, well, geez, it's going to be tied to hotel tax, and if we have a big downturn, then the stadium and the funding could have trouble. But clearly, as you mentioned, with the unfortunate incident on October 1st, it allowed us to see what happens, and the fact that they're a little bit above the projections is pretty remarkable. Now, when you look at the stadium and the process, the construction, because we every time we have one of those meetings, we get an update on the percentage of construction completed and what they're doing. And as a part of that, and as you being around the stadium project a lot, you discovered, I think, what's a really remarkable thing, and this is how they're the builders are really doing a digital blueprint of the stadium that is incredible. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've never seen anything quite like this, and probably the reason why I haven't is because I don't think that anything like this has existed in any major construction project like this anywhere. And basically what the Raiders subcontractor or their contractor, that is McCarthy Builders, has done is that they have established a plan where they will fly a drone around the perimeter of the stadium on a fairly regular basis. And they've programmed it so that it takes the same flight path every single time. So they're able to easily compare progress that's been made on the site. But the remarkable thing is that they have overlaid that video that's been produced from the drone footage and overlaid it onto the plans that have been established for building. So what that means is that every single square inch of that stadium is accounted for in terms of where every culvert is, where every electricity conduit is, where all the drainage is, where every light switch is, which is truly amazing. Obviously, the benefit to having something like that in hand is that, eventually down the road, 5 years or so, they're going to probably want to make some improvements, maybe make some changes within the stadium. Well, now they have a physical record showing precisely where everything is, so that if they need to cut a door or make a few changes, they'll know exactly where the electricity is, where the utility lines are, and it won't be any kind of a problem. So the way they demonstrated this at the last Stadium Authority board meeting was they showed a video that actually showed kind of a cutaway of every little hallway. You can actually basically virtually walk through any part of the stadium that you want and see where things are beneath concrete and the steel that's already supporting some of the ramps and the concourses that they already have in place. And trust me, there's a lot of it already there.
Yeah, those videos were remarkable. We actually posted those, and the folks that are watching the show now, because we stream the show, can see it here. And Rick, that's the thing. Again, we're talking to Rick Velotta, who's the assistant business editor over at the Las Vegas Review-Journal. One of the things, too, that I think that's interesting to people, especially not only those people in Las Vegas, but a lot of Raider fans who are buying season tickets. They live in Southern California. They live in Northern California. A lot of the questions we get is, of course, about tailgating, which parking, that'll be another conversation for us in another show, Rick. But when it comes to development around the stadium area, that South Strip area near Mandalay Bay between Russell Road, I-15, and around where the project is, how is that looking long-term, and what might we see in that area?
Well, obviously right now, this is the neighborhood's going to undergo a drastic change in the years ahead. And early on, actually several months ago, there was a group that came together to discuss the prospect of a stadium district. And by that, I mean some, construction of amenities in the immediate vicinity of the stadium that are more conducive to what the fans want. We're talking about restaurants, bars, small entertainment facilities, things of that nature. Right now, the neighborhood is primarily warehousing and storage facilities. That footprint is likely to change because the land is going to become more valuable as a stadium district and to have things surrounding it. And, those of us who have been sports fans and have gone to some of these places that have been established for several years have seen the what these types of things look like. And the most recent visit I made was to State Farm Insurance Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, which is the home of the Cardinals. And that whole area around that stadium has had a remarkable transition. I think it initially was a lot of agriculture and desert, but now there's a lot of retail around it. And actually the hockey arena where the Coyotes play is right there as well. Mm-hmm. So you see an area where there's restaurants and bars associated, so people can either go to the game early and have a meal, or they can go afterwards and have a few drinks at the bar or a meal after the game is over. That's something that we're going to be seeing in Las Vegas as well as the stadium district starts to take shape. And again, it's not going to happen tomorrow or even the next year, but it's going to be something that will evolve over time in that particular space.
Absolutely. It takes time. I know being in Glendale myself before and seeing the area when that stadium first opened versus now, it's a multi-year development process. It does not happen overnight. Not everything's going to be there. So when Raider fans come in from out of town and they go down there and they're like, hey, there's nothing here, you got to give it some time there as well. I saw that in San Diego, saw that actually in Atlanta too. So it's definitely a long-term prospect. And if you want to know the latest and greatest about what's happening with the stadium, make sure you pay attention to Rick's work over at the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Again, Rick Velotta, the assistant business editor at the RJ. Thanks, Rick. We appreciate you being with us.
Thanks for having me on, Scott. I appreciate it.
All right, we're going to step aside. We'll be back right after this break on the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
CBS Sports Radio. Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Scott Gulbranson on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
Okay, welcome back, Raider Nation, to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140. And to our viewers on our live stream, thanks for sticking with us. Had some audio issues that we fixed, so we're good to go for the rest of the show. At least that's what I'm saying. No, we will be. Thanks for putting up with that. We are back talking Raider football, and it was a busy week in Raider Nation, guys. Again, joined by Kelly Kreiner and Chaz Osborne. Okay, let's talk through a little bit of these signings. Brandon Marshall, of course, inside linebacker, 1-year deal, $4.1 million. Let me tell you what I like about this signing for the Raiders. Number one, veteran linebacker, so you need that leadership. Of course, he joins Vontaze Burkett, another older veteran as well, barely. Also, I like the fact that he is just under 30, and he's hungry to prove himself after knee injuries last year in Denver, cut down his playing time. So I like this. He's going to have to work for it. It's if you want to call a $4.1 million prove-it deal, although he's going to be there for camp. None of these guys that have signed necessarily have to make the roster, right? You think they will. Of course, Brandon Marshall, Vontaze Burkett, some of those guys. But, Kelly, what do you think of the Marshall signing overall?
I mean, all the signings that they've had lately, you're just kind of filling in holes. So that way, like I said, I look at the draft, how this affects the draft. Basically, they're setting themselves up to where they don't have to go to a certain position, to where now they have a middle linebacker. So if they don't get one in the draft, they've got somebody there. It's a lot of the last few signings have just been putting things into place. So worst case scenario, we know who's at this position, day one. Best case scenario, we can improve on this position and move on from this deal without it really costing us anything.
Yep.
Chaz, how about you, man? What do you think? I mean, Brandon Marshall, again, to me, knee injuries last year, so you have a little bit of concern with. He was in the second year of a 5-year contract in Denver, but I like, again, that leadership that's there and a position they need, really. And to Kelly's point, they don't have to necessarily address it in the draft.
That's exactly why I like it. I love it, actually. I think Las Vegas should love it, right? Cimarron.
If he makes it to Vegas.
Cimarron Spartans.
That's right.
But, very high character. We talked about maybe questionable character with Burfict, and we don't know what AB is going to do. This guy, he's won multiple awards in the community. He started the Williams Marshall Cares leadership program. Been to 2 Super Bowls. Let me give you a quote after his signing. This is what he said. to have people that have won and have winning habits and know the winning habits, it infects the locker room in a positive way, and it's contagious. And he's right. I've been a part of championship locker rooms, and I've been a part of, cancerous locker rooms, and it permeates it, the practice facility to the games, through the office. You can tell when you're winning, and you can tell when you're losing. And, when you're trying to change the culture, it starts with changing the mentality. And this guy's got that winning, positive mentality.
Okay, so I'm going to assume, Chaz, that you believe Brandon Marshall is on the opening day roster.
Yes, absolutely.
Kelly, what about you?
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, for the price they're paying him, you're not going to find a replacement better.
Yeah, that's I agree 100%. And he's hungry. I love the fact that he's hungry. To Chaz's point, too, about his community work, he was one of the guys who kneeled for the national anthem, but, I think he went through that stage. He went through that protest, but it didn't impact him in any other way. He really, because he's so ingrained in his communities, he was in Denver. Of course, he is here in Las Vegas, and it would be nice to see him make it back home in 2020. Now, okay, at running back, Isaiah Crowell, 1 year it's incentive-laden, $2.5 million. Of course, Isaiah Crowell was going to Georgia, dismissed because of a weapons arrest, so he had to go to Alabama State. Great runner between the tackles, falls forward on contact, which I like. And if Lynch does not return, guys, I like the signing because you just need a guy who can do that and serve that role. I'm not saying in any way he's even close to being Marshawn Lynch, let me add. But as a guy who you want to come in and compete, I don't know that he makes the roster. I think he will. But I think to have a guy like this come in and compete and get a chance to make the team, I think that it's a good signing.
There are 10 guys like this in the draft. So, you could have easily got an Isaiah Crowell out of the draft this year. But you kind of do want that because he's basically the elder statesman of the backfield if Marshawn doesn't come back. So you kind of want somebody in that running back room, in that kind of group, to kind of mold the people around there. But to me, this is kind of an inconsequential signing.
I disagree. I think he's going to be a little bit better than we thought. He's kind of an up-and-coming player. He had 219 yards rushing against the Broncos in a game last year, and that's a great defense up there in Denver. He won the AFC Player of the Week award, and then he was placed on IR after a toe injury after Week 14. So, and then he was ultimately became a casualty of the Le'Veon Bell signing. And I think the Raiders took advantage of a great situation. Here we've got a young, up-and-coming guy. And, Gruden always talks about, he wants a guy that can run, he wants a guy that can pass. He's looking for his Charlie Garner, I guess. So maybe the question might be, does the Crowell signing mean the termination of Marshawn Lynch? Or are we going to see maybe a thunder and lightning situation?
You sound like every fantasy football owner Isaiah Crowell's career right now.
I've never played fantasy football.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying, and I think it does offer a hint of what the Raiders think Marshawn Lynch will do, and that is maybe that he's done. By no means does that mean it's going to happen, but I think, to Kelly's point, it is an insurance policy from a veteran standpoint. You have a veteran back there, and I think he's got, if you look at him too, his strengths, right? Again, between the tackles, he also can break a big play. He does have good speed. Yep. He can catch the ball, but let me add that in these new offenses, especially the Raiders' new offense, it's not like these other guys you see around the league, like with the Saints and the Rams, where they're going downfield, okay? Crowell does not do that. He's a dump-off guy. He's never going to be one of these new running backs who runs routes and runs them well and opens up down the field. That's just not his thing. So from that standpoint, I agree with you, Kelly, there. But he is good in pass protection, too. So that's another reason. And Gruden's propensity to like these veterans, too, I think plays into that.
And also to Kelly's point, depending on if the Raiders do take a back in the draft, that might have an effect on where Marshawn Lynch ends up.
That's true. All right, well, we're going to step aside here for a few moments, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by the Czar of the Playbook, Mr. Emery Hunt, who will talk pro days and Raider draft picks. Get ready. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Steve Wisniewski, and you're listening to Silver and Black today.
Indeed you are. Welcome. Happy Sunday to you and everyone out there, Raider Nation. This is Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio. in Las Vegas, and we are going out now on the phone lines to bring in the Czar of the Playbook. Yes, Emery Hunt. Emery Hunt is the founder and CEO of Football Game Plan, which has been supplying analysis of all levels of football since 2007. Born and raised in New Orleans, Hunt played running back at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Yes, he indeed is a raging Cajun.
Yeah.
And he coached high school football before starting Game Plan. He's also the wild man who called 2 football games on the same day in television back in 2016. Emery, welcome. Oh, having an issue with the phone. We'll get to Emery just in a second. But Emery, guys, he's going to give us this background on what's going on with the pro days. We all heard a lot about the pro days and who was kind of shining there, who wasn't shining there. So it'll be interesting to see what happened. Of course, everybody knows about Ed Oliver, right, Kelly? I mean, Kelly, dude, he again impressed. Just when I said he wasn't going to be in the top 4, he goes out there and just blows away the pro days.
Yeah, I mean, you see this every year about like the top guys. Everybody starts nitpicking at him because that's the popular thing to do, and that's what everybody wants to do. And I tweeted out, Ed Oliver's the most underappreciated talent in this draft. You know, he's the fact that people, didn't expect this coming surprised me because that's what you see on film every time he plays.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt he's an incredible player. Now he's improved his stock. We'll see how much. I still think he'll fall below maybe 8 or 9, but in the 10 to 15 range, probably higher. I mean, high 10, 11-ish, depending who's there.
There's no way, in my opinion, he falls past Atlanta at 14. He shouldn't fall past 8 or 9, in my opinion. I think he's a top 5 player in this draft, but just kind of the way the team needs and everything kind of fit, I could see him kind of falling past that. And then also if, with McCoy in Tampa Bay, if they decide, they're moving on him after a year, you could easily see Ed Oliver go 5.
Yeah, no doubt. And that'll change things up a little bit. I think it also, for those in Raider Nation who want the Raiders to draft a defensive stud at the top of the first round, certainly now with Ed Oliver performing so well and maybe some of the teams looking at him differently than they did before this, even though I think pro days are overrated, and Emery will talk about that when we get him on the phone. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there with him. But do we have Emery now? Emery, hey, man, how you doing? Did you hear my introduction of you?
I did hear your introduction, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. It sounds like I've done a lot, right?
Well, you have, and let me add, I have to say this at the top, and I know we're going to be a little bit short on time now because of the issues we had with the phone. But we also, I used to go to Lafayette all the time when I worked at UNLV with football when we were in the same conference there for a little while. I ate at Prejean's, had a great time down there. So it's a fantastic place.
Absolutely love Lafayette, man.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so now before we get into the Raiders, you're looking at college talent 365 days a year. And, of course, pro days came up. You said that you just don't get why people talk themselves out of good talent due to a bad pro day. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, you spend all of the time watching film and you fall in love with these guys and what they're able to do with the football in their hands or what they're able to do on the football field, and you dismiss all of that information based off 2 or 3 months of workouts, whether it's pro days, individual workouts, combines. It never made sense to me because a lot of things you're doing at the combine or pro days are not football related. So guys are really transforming their bodies and training specifically for a test, as opposed to what they've actually done on the football field. I compare it to how students in high school study for SATs and ACTs more than what they do the entire high school career and trying to really learn and soak in the information that's useful, not just preparing for a test. So I feel like that's what's happening with the combine and pro days. So I'm always of the mindset to focus solely on what guys are able to do in the actual games, and because that's what you're going to be actually doing at the next level. That's right, and watching that game tape and seeing what they do in the field of play is so big. Now, okay, so if we look at the Raiders now, let's speak about them real quick. In your latest video, you did kind of your mock draft and talked about what they might be looking for, especially with pass rush at number 4. And if Josh Allen's not there, Bosa's not going to be there, clearly, most likely, and they'll be gone. You had the Raiders
going with Rashawn Gary. Talk about Rashawn Gary and why you think he'd be a great selection for Oakland right there.
I think he's one of the more athletic guys in the draft, regardless of position. And when you combine a guy that's athletic with his frame at 6'5", 285, with probably the room to get even bigger without losing athleticism, he would be the perfect complement to a guy like Arden Key, who's more of your linear, lean, athletic rusher. Now you have a big power rusher on the other side, and you can really cause problems up front, for an opposing offense. So I just think because of how the Raiders already have a guy in Key that's going to continue to develop and be more of that speed guy, you combine him with a speed power guy on the opposite side, and it's going to make life easier for what they have already on the interior, Maurice Hurst and P.J. Hall and those guys like that.
Hey, Emery, it's Kelly Kreiner here. You mentioned about how everybody looks at pro days and they kind of forget the film. To me, Rashawn Gary's like the other side of that, to where if you watch him on film for the last 3 years, he just does not show up on tape a lot, but he has all those physical abilities. He's got the perfect size. He's what you want, but you don't see it there. How much do you have to weigh that also when you're looking into scouting a prospect?
Well, that's a great question because you look at Rashawn Gary and you bring up two other prospects that probably are in the same boat. You look at Ed Oliver out of Houston, and you also look at a guy that came out a couple of years ago, Robert Kimbichi, who had the same measurables and same athleticism but didn't show up on tape at Ole Miss. While Oliver showed up at times, but you kind of saw him, in a way, take the year off this year, and understandable. But for Gary, I think it's a little bit of both. You want to know, okay, how healthy was he at Michigan? Was he trying to fight through an injury, or was he taking a year off? And that's why the interviews at the Combine are probably more important than the actual workouts, the interviews and the medicals. And once you find out what was his major issue and why he wasn't as productive as, say, a Montez Sweat or a Josh Allen, then you could better project him moving forward. So I'm going to side on the side of positivity and say, okay, maybe he was playing through a little bit of an injury and didn't want to further aggravate the injury and lose a chance to go in the top 10. So I'm going to take that approach, but that's a question in the conversation that you really have to have with him when you sit down with him.
Hey, Emery, can we hold you over the break since we couldn't get you on? Can you give us a few more minutes?
Okay.
All right, we're going to bring Emery Hunt right back. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio. And we're carrying over our guest from last hour. That is Emery Hunt from Football Game Plan. He's the CEO there, analyst of all levels of football since 2007. And we were talking about the Raiders' possibility for a draft. And Emery said that he liked Rashawn Gary. Now, it's funny, Emery, on our live YouTube feed over on video, it's a really he's a polarizing player for Raider fans, and I see the same comment over and over again, and I want to get your reaction to it. And that is a lot of, now these are fans, they don't do it for a living like you do, but let's give them a voice here. They say that they feel like he doesn't always give a lot of effort in watching. Now, when you watch the tape, the game tape of him, do you see any of that?
You could see effort, and you see a guy that's nursing some sort of injury, and that's why it's kind of tricky, because you kind of saw a lot of the same things, and you heard a lot of the questions, especially in the early part of the year. This year with Ed Oliver out of Houston, people said, wow, he's really not giving effort. He's getting blocked. And I think the Navy game was one where people just said, wow, this guy is really getting blown off the ball. And, then you go back and look at it and like, okay, this game he was getting doubled and triple teamed. Now, Gary, sometimes it is there and it sometimes is not. You could say the same thing about a lot of guys. But I just think that with Gary, what made him jump onto the scene was his play last year. And you're like, okay, this guy's going to be a tremendous threat. And you kind of wonder if he took the year off or is nursing some sort of injury. I think that's the case with a lot of these guys. They don't want to get hurt, protect their assets, and then get into the league and then go off. Now, that's a tricky game you can play because, again, we said the same things about Robert Kimbichi coming out of Ole Miss, and we still haven't really seen him turn the corner just yet.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, Kelly, you wanted to talk about Kimbichi.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that the biggest red flag with Kimbichi wasn't so much his tape as much as he fell off a balcony.
Oh, yeah.
That was
tough.
Yeah.
But on Gary, and we'll wrap it up here on Gary Emery, and that is, you said, hey, you don't limit this guy because of his athleticism. You don't limit him to a 3-tech. What do you see him from his strength perspective? If the Raiders were to grab him, what do you see that Paul Gunther could do with him to change it up?
For him, you can see him playing on the outside like a 7 technique, or even head up on a tackle in a 6 technique, or you probably want to push him down inside, maybe like a 5 if you want to get creative defensively. But you don't want to put him inside. Yes, he can play there in certain packages, but why take away the talent of Maurice Hurst or P.J. Hall or guys like that, a healthy Eddie Vander does? Why take those guys off the field because you want to put Gary inside? So I think when you're the Raiders, you have the luxury of having some talented defensive tackles that you can also play with, along with 2 guys that could be really good bookends in the Arden Key. And if they draft Rashawn Gary, I think that would give them probably one of the more formidable defensive front fours, versatile defensive front fours in the AFC West.
When Gary came to Michigan, he was the number 1 recruit in the country. He was a defensive tackle, and everybody wanted him to lose a little bit of weight, go on the edge because they saw all this potential. But, I've watched every Michigan game, for the last 15, 20 years, and in my opinion, he's one of the most disappointing prospects I've seen, because every time you watch the Michigan defense, one player's popping and having a big game, and it was just never Rashawn Gary. It was 2 years ago it was Maurice Hurst. Last year it was Bush and Winovich. It's like, I get that you see there's that potential there, but it's like with Kimdichie, like with all those other guys, is like, how much credence are you putting in that potential over the actual production? Because from snap to snap, his production just isn't there at Michigan.
You also have to wonder how much of attention is being drawn his way, because a lot of times guys are doing their job, and that's why the interviews are important. Because I tweeted this out as well, I want to say yesterday, where just because someone isn't doing something doesn't mean they can't. It's more probably about what they're being asked to do. So maybe his job as the main option on his defensive line is taking focus away, so guys like Winovich and Hurst and Bush and all those other guys you mentioned can have their success. So it's interesting with Rashawn Gary, and you saw similar things, let's say, with a guy like Myles Garrett, who had some questions coming out of Texas A&M, like, man, this guy really beat up on lesser teams, but he disappeared in big games. And the other end, Deshaun Hall, was the guy that really was having a field day in these big games. Is Hall better than Myles Garrett, or was Myles Garrett being asked to play a unique role against his team to free up other guys, getting to the quarterback, knowing the attention was going to be on him? So I'm not saying he's Myles Garrett. I'm not saying Myles Garrett is Rashawn Gary. I'm saying a lot of situations with these guys are different. It's almost like the running back that has caught, 5 passes in college. Doesn't mean he can't catch. He probably wasn't asked to catch the football a lot because they just decided to give him the football in the backfield and let him run. So I think we have to be careful with that with certain players. And we've seen this be a trend, to be honest, along the defensive line, like I just said, with Gary, with Garrett and Oliver and Kimdichie. So it's unique with this defensive line position.
Yeah, and again, we're talking to Emery Hunt from Football Game Plan. Emery, now, if we look at the Raiders moving past 4, if things stayed, of course, we know the draft is so fluid. They could trade out of that spot. They could trade down, trade whatever they're going to do. But if they stood pat with where they're at now, at the bottom of that first round, they have other needs. Obviously, they have a big gap now at guard on the left side on the offensive line. They still need help at linebacker. They still need help at tight end. Do you see them going in which direction at the bottom of the first round?
When I did my mock draft, it was right before they signed Nevin Lawson, who was a nickel corner. That's why I gave them Byron Murphy.
Yeah.
So even with that, Murphy's still a really good player. I could still see them taking him. You never could have enough good corners. But when you look at the losses that they have, if you're looking at the end of the round, the later part in the round, you're looking at a guard, and if the premier guard prospect, in my opinion, is still on the board, I would run up there and select him right away, and that's Chris Lindstrom out of Boston College. That way you don't have to worry about moving a guy like Colton Miller inside and hoping that he could be productive at guard. You can just plug in Chris Lindstrom right away, and he's going to be productive. And so I think if he's there, that's a way to go. If they want to go linebacker, there are a couple of guys that I really like in this draft, outside linebackers, but they could wait for Justin Hollins out of Oregon, who I think is a very good run stopper, but underrated as a pass rusher because he wasn't really asked to do that at Oregon. He played the run edge defender while Jalen Jelks on the opposite side played the pass rusher. And quite honestly, I think Hollins may be better at pass rushing than Jelks was in that role. So there are some outside linebackers that you probably wait until second or third round to take. But if you're trying to go impact players in round one, which you should with all three picks, Chris Lindstrom will be so hard to pass up if I'm Oakland.
You mentioned Chris Lindstrom. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine who works in the league. We were arguing over Reisner versus Lindstrom. If you had the choice and both of them were sitting there, I'm a Reisner guy because I think he can play 4 spots on the offensive line where Lindstrom's just going to be a guard. Do you have a preference for you if you were picking between those two?
I would rather go with Lindstrom. And if we're talking specifically for the Raiders, I can understand why you would go with Reisner because of the versatility. But if I'm looking for a guard and I have a chance to take what I think is a for sure shot at that position, I'm going to gamble on that rather than, okay, maybe Reisner can play guard at a higher level or can he play tackle? You see this discussion happening with Jonah Williams at Alabama. Can he play left tackle or maybe he's better inside as a guard? I know if I need a guard, I'm going to get the best guard out there first before I, gamble with anything else because that also falls in line with do I trust my position coach to get the most out of him at a different position? And that's a whole different conversation we need to have.
Now, Emery, if we look at the draft overall, and of course we've been talking Raider draft because that's our main subject of our show. But if you look at the draft, I mean, we're hearing all the talk about Kyler Murray going number 1 to the Cardinals and what that could do to the entire first round. If what does your gut tell you on how this first round is going to net out? You think the Cardinals are going to take Murray, or you think they're going to go Bosa?
Another great question because ideally you don't want to. If I'm Steve Keim, I would basically be signing my death certificate by taking the quarterback 1 when I just traded assets last year to take a quarterback in the top 10.
Yeah.
And so that's one way to look at it. The other way is like, okay, well, I'm man enough to admit my mistake, and I'm going to take a quarterback to rectify what I did last year. So I get that. But I just have a gut feeling that they may go defensive line. And if they go any other pick outside of Kyler Murray, then I think you may see the entire first round, at least in the top 8, go up in flames. And it'll be a free fall. So I think you may see some chaos there. But I know all signs are pointing to Murray, but when have we ever seen the draft play itself out? Just like we saw it 2 years ago when all signs pointed to Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, and all of a sudden the team trades up 1 spot to take Mitch Trubisky, number 2. That blew my mind.
Good point.
I don't know what to expect here with the Cardinals. Smart money says probably go with the defensive line or build around Josh Rosen and hope he has a Jared Goff-like bounce-back season. But, man, the Kyler Murray, I can understand it, but I just have a hard time seeing Steve Keim admit that mistake so quickly on a top 10 pick.
Yeah, that's, again, we're talking to Emery Hunt of Football Game Plan.
Yeah, you brought up Jonah Williams a second ago, and I am the biggest Jonah Williams as a left tackle guy that you're going to run into. Let me ask you how, people are saying he may have to move to guard, but then they're telling me Greg Little out of Ole Miss is a left tackle in the NFL. When you watch these games, Jonah Williams is so much better technically. He's played left tackle at Alabama for 2 years and done it extremely well. Yet everybody's trying to tell me Greg Little's a left tackle. How do you take the two and kind of separate who you think can be left tackle, who you think has to move to guard?
Well, you just laid out the perfect argument. You watch this guy dominate on film, and it's like, man, what is the whole issue with Jonah Williams? I'm not seeing it because all I see him do is dominate at left tackle. And with Greg Little, it's almost like a guy that came in highly touted as a freshman and didn't progress from there. Kind of like Josh Rosen at the quarterback position, played so well as a freshman, as a true freshman, that he just stayed the same, and we didn't really take in account that he didn't get better. So he's probably more along the lines of a guy that you could see kick down inside. And I know people always bring this up, but I always use this as a counter argument. They bring up the long arms argument for the outside position. He doesn't have the long enough arms. But, in the boxing ring, everybody had longer reach than Mike Tyson. It's all about how he was able to utilize what he had to get inside and knock you out in 48 seconds. So if you have long arms, but you take all day to get those long arms up, you're beat anyway. Your long arms are useless. In the hood, we call those guys big for nothing, right? So look at a guy like Jonah Williams using what he has to make what he has work for him. So obviously he's mastered that. We've seen that now with the quote-unquote short quarterbacks. They've been short their whole life, so they know how to overcome that and play within themselves and maximize their talent. So the long arms, short arms doesn't matter to me. It's all about how quickly you can get them up, how you can use them, and how quickly you can reset your hands, get a good anchor, and then redirect that defender the opposite way. And Jonah Williams does that better than any tackle in the draft class, in my opinion.
All right. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Find him at footballgameplan.com. Emery, thanks, man. We'll have you on again real soon. We appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thanks Emery.
Guys.
All right. That has been Emery Hunt, footballgameplan.com. Check it out. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we'll be joined by Ryan Young of Yahoo Sports, talk about NFL, DirecTV, Sunday Ticket. Will you be able to see Raider games anywhere? We'll ask him that question next.
The 12th annual
Take Silver and Black Today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
That's right. Take Silver and Black Today with you in your pocket. Radio.com. Go download it. All right. We are not talking radio now. We're going to talk television and specifically the NFL TV rules, contracts, you name it. Of course, DirecTV. I got DirecTV originally, still have it because of NFL Sunday Ticket. That's what we're going to talk about, the NFL and their future with television and streaming. And we're joined now by Ryan Young with Yahoo Sports. He's been there since January of 2018. He's an Iowa native, went to Iowa State, so he knows a little bit something about UNLV's new basketball coach. We texted about that. He's currently in Los Angeles. And Ryan, thanks for joining us here on the Silver and Black Today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Cool, man. Okay, so for the past 25 years, the only way fans, for the most part, could watch out-of-market NFL games was to be a subscriber like me to NFL Sunday Ticket on DirecTV, and that was it. Now, the league currently has a deal. It doesn't end with them until 2022, but clearly there's an option to get out of it now for the 2020 season. Where are we at with it, and what is the NFL, what do you think they're going to do as far as maybe opting out of this, and what sort of different system may we see?
Well, yeah, I think that's interesting because I don't think Roger Goodell would have come out and even brought this topic up now if he wasn't thinking about getting out of it before the 2020 season, which is when that out clause is. So I think that's when we're going to see some sort of change. Now, what they're actually going to do, I think it's too early to tell, and he hasn't really opened up about which avenue he wants to take. But I definitely think that we're going to see some more streaming-friendly, fan-friendly service out there, kind of like how the NBA does it.
Yeah, and that to me is I'm not a huge. I know you cover the NBA, you cover a bunch of sports. I'm not a big NBA fan, but I've always been appreciative of the NBA TV and how they handle it because it allows fans to watch it. As long as there's not a local blackout, those would still be in effect no matter what they do. Because if a local station is showing a game, you have to black that one out, and there's no excuse because people can watch it there. But what the NBA does and the system they have, what has taken is it that deal with DirecTV that's taken the NFL so long to get to this point?
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize that it had been 25 years either with DirecTV. I mean, that's a long time to be locked in. And for the most part, this hasn't been an issue until 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago at most, when people really started tuning in games on their phones or their laptops or things other than just sitting down on your couch or going to a bar and watching the game on TV. I mean, this is kind of a new trend. So I think that the NBA really jumped on that first, and you've seen some other leagues do that too. And the NBA, partially because of this deal, or the NFL, partially because of this deal, has just been a step behind. Yeah, and I think now they're finally starting to catch up.
Yeah, it's remarkable, and that's true. I mean, the whole thing with streaming has changed the game, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. People want to be able to watch the games. I was frustrated as a viewer having Sunday Ticket, and then this past year, I would go out, I'd pull up my phone to watch a game, and it'd say, "Oh, you can't stream that here. It's only available on Fox.com, or it's only available on CBS." And it's like, wait a minute, what did I pay for this package for? And so the way they structure that, and I get it, those individual broadcast networks have rights to those games. But have you found data that shows that fans in the NFL are getting kind of fed up with that, and this is coming from that, or is this purely just a money play?
I haven't found data specifically to back that up, but you see, how people talk on Twitter and how they are actually viewing these games, and you can see people start to get frustrated. I mean, if you don't live in the town where your team is, which, the majority of the country, you're not fortunate enough to live in that city, you have to find other ways to watch these games. But yeah, I mean, they're going to have to upgrade this avenue and just move to a streaming service and open it up to everybody. And that's the only way to grow this league. I mean, everybody's talking about, the NFL numbers are down, people aren't watching the NFL as much anymore. This helps combat that if you just open it up to everybody.
Exactly.
Hey, Ryan, it's Kelly here. You talked about, we talked about streaming numbers, how the NBA does everything. How close are we to where it's basically just pay per game or per, team package to where, say I want to watch all the Raider games, I pay one thing and I get all the Raider games. Or say I'm out of market and I just want to watch one game because I've got a 17 parlay and I need this one to go in, to where I can pay, say, $4 or whatever and just watch one game on a streaming service. Is that something you see in the future?
I think that's something we could definitely get to in the future. I think with the NFL specifically, it's still a way off since they're still locked into this television streaming deal. But I think that's interesting. You bring up betting and people wanting to watch just specific games, to have that option to, pay and say, hey, I want to watch this Raider game on Sunday and just pay, whatever it is for that specific game. I think that's something they could definitely get to. Now, whether they do or not, because they would definitely make more money if they just force you to buy, the package for the week or the weekend or for, the season for one team. They can definitely get more money that way. So it's a question of if they want to open it up that way. But it's definitely possible. Well,
and like you said, I think for the health of the game, to me the challenge with the NFL is shifting the focus away from they've done an amazing job. I mean, $25 billion, right? The NFL has been focused on profitability and revenue, which is great to make the league healthy, and it's supposed to trickle down to the players too. We'll see how that goes. But from a fan perspective, it's things like officiating and access to the product, right? We see with Major League Baseball the disaster with them. Even though Major League Baseball ratings are still pretty good and they have a lot of viewers, it's impossible in Las Vegas. I don't know if you know this, Ryan. It's a good story for you to do sometime. In Las Vegas, we are blacked out of 7 baseball markets, so we can't. We cannot watch Dodgers, Oakland A's, Seattle, the Angels, the Padres. So every West Coast team is blacked out in Las Vegas. So it makes no sense. So the Major League Baseball is killing its own product by not allowing people to access it. So the NFL, I think, in thinking about this, I really hope, as much as I've enjoyed having DirecTV, I really hope that they do this because that's what the freedom of choice, the ability to take it with you on a computer or an iPad or whatever you're using is big. And you're right. They listen to fans. I know they have a great listening post. So the fact that they're listening and considering this, like you said, certainly would help the game continue to be popular and keep its edge.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. And, I mean, the other thing is, people aren't buying TV subscriptions like they used to.
Right.
I know me personally, I don't have cable. I don't have a big DirecTV subscription. I just stream things. And that's becoming a very growing trend with millennials and younger people to where you aren't just going to sit down and have a cable package like that. So if they don't jump ahead and make this available on other avenues, they're going to fall way behind.
And do you think with this, do you see this spreading out and maybe they're going to go and kind of go with an approach where it's everything? Or do you think this is going to become more like a NFL TV like NBA TV is like?
I think if it would benefit the league if they did like an NFL TV because then they get to control it all. But with all of the deals that they have, it could be hard to structure that. So I think it would maybe make more sense, especially if they get out early for 2020, if they just open it up to, say, DirecTV and allow them to stream it through DirecTV Now or through other streaming services like that are already in existence. And then you can just jump and go. I mean, if they're going to launch an NFL TV type thing, that would take a lot of groundwork. And they could be doing it now, but that would take a lot of planning, and it could take a while to get that off the ground.
Well, and Kelly brought it up. We were talking about this the other day in preparation for your interview. And Kelly, I think they'll go the route myself of an Amazon or something like that. You said, Kelly, right? So Amazon has the backbone. They have everything ready to go. They've already been streaming games.
Yeah, my whole thing was they brought this up to kind of let DirecTV know that, because Amazon or Facebook or any of these things that already have a streaming property already have way more cash to pay So if this is just a stick up to try to get more cash, they're going to be able to go to an Amazon. They're going to be able to go to a Netflix. They're going to be able to go to those places that already have the streaming component in place to where the NFL doesn't have to do their own streaming thing. They can just piggyback on the people that are already doing the streaming.
Ryan Young from Yahoo Sports. Ryan, thanks for joining us, man. I hope to talk to you in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, that was Ryan Young from Yahoo Sports. Check him out at Ryan Young 44 on Twitter. Write some great stuff for Yahoo. We're going to step aside when we come back. We're going to talk a little more about NFL marketing and other sports and how it relates and why the NFL continues to rule the roost. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
We're here with Chuck, founder of Dollar Loan Center. Hey, what about those who have applied for a loan with DLC?
This is Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Indeed you are. Welcome back. As we are in the back half of the second hour here on Silver and Black today, the only All Raiders show in Las Vegas, streaming worldwide on radio.com. And we have just a massive conversation going on YouTube. I mean, the folks on YouTube and Facebook both just having a whale of a time going back and forth on draft stuff and everything. It's pretty fun. So if you want to watch us, you can go there too and physically watch us. Okay, we talked in the last interview with Ryan Young about NFL, direct ticket, all that, or Sunday ticket. And what I wanted to do is have a conversation too, because the NFL, when you look at it from a marketing perspective, which I tend to because I do it for a living, I tend to look at things that way. Guys, when you look at the NFL, there's no question that the NFL is the top dog, right? You look at everything. The Gallup poll 2018, what's the most popular sports? Number one is football, with 37% of the respondents saying that's their favorite. Number two, what's your guess on number two?
Basketball.
I will say NBA.
Basketball was number two. Number three?
Major League Baseball.
Baseball. Now, this is just sport. They didn't even get into specific leagues.
Hockey.
And number four would be?
Soccer.
Absolutely right. Soccer. It was not hockey. A lot of people think of NHL as the fourth sport, and it is in some things, but it is not as far as what sports people like. Now, if you look at the fan base, this is active fan base, digital TV combined, NFL, 159 million. 64% of their potential audience is engaged with the NFL. That is a remarkable number. 64%, which is why they can garner so much for their TV rights. Then second, Major League Baseball, 114 million, 46%. Third, NBA with 80 million, 32%. And number four, don't say MLS.
Hockey.
No, NASCAR, 58 million, 23%.
Yeah, that is
right.
NASCAR's got just a rabid fan base. So that really doesn't surprise me.
Well, and their growth has slowed a little bit as of lately, but still it's number four. Those numbers are current as well. And then if you look at attendance, Major League Baseball is number one with 36 million. Obvious reasons, 162 games, 80 games in each ballpark, 81 games. NFL with 15 million, NBA with 11, and the NHL with 10. Who would have thought? Again, though, they have 40 games at home. So when you look at attendance for each team, that's why TV, NFL, 144 million, Major League Baseball second with 102, and a distant third is the NBA with 74 million, and NHL with 40 million. Now, I would argue, Kelly and I were talking before the show started, that I would argue that those numbers are skewed because the Major League Baseball has so many more games than the NBA, double the games, and I think the NBA would be higher if there were apples and apples, right? But interesting stuff. But the thing that the NFL does so good is it markets itself, right? Look at what the NFL does and how it makes its product available. There's no other sport that does it like it. You guys agree?
NBA is pretty close.
NBA is getting better. NBA is really getting the younger crowd, the younger generation, to where, baseball is your grandfather's sport.
Yep.
Football is your father's. NBA is kind of yours. Well, depending on your age range. Obviously, we're all old here.
Hey,
so I mean,
it's true.
But yeah, it's Major League Baseball. Just all the proof you need. They don't market themselves well. Mike Trout's probably the best player of the last 50 years, and nobody knows who he is.
Absolutely.
No, that's right. And if you look at the numbers too here, revenue wise, as I mentioned earlier, NFL $25 billion business, billions. Major League Baseball $10 billion. This surprised me, by the way, when I looked this all up. $10 billion in revenue in 2017. It's the first time baseball had ever reached that number. But with the short attention span society and with kids especially inner city and lower income kids can't afford to play baseball, it's losing popularity amongst kids.
You hear that all the time, but you got kids in the Dominican that grow up playing baseball poorer than anybody in the inner cities here. And, you need to stick a rock to play baseball. And that's what they do down there.
Yes, but here's the difference, though. I agree with you. But in the Dominican Republic, they don't have a basketball court down the street. Like in inner cities, lower income neighborhoods in the United States, I think the kids don't make the gloves out of the milk cartons and play with a stick because it's like, why do that? I can go down the street.
You made a glove out of a milk carton?
Yeah, you ever see that
No.
in the Dominican?
No.
Oh yeah, they make gloves out of milk cartons. They flatten them out, and that's how they play baseball. And they have a really hard baseball and a stick.
Yeah.
To your point, I mean, totally makes your point, which is they will find a way to play baseball. That country, that area is just enamored with the game. Yep. Basketball is not a play.
Necessity is the mother of all invention.
Absolutely.
I had a persimmon tree in my backyard. We would throw persimmons and swing sticks and play baseball.
Yep.
Yes, no, that's the best part of it all. I mean, yes, it is.
But all you need in football and basketball, all you need is a ball. One ball, you get the guys together, you're playing.
Right, which is why I think that has happened, right? But the numbers, the NFL, though, the NFL, again, we talked about it with Ryan Young. The NFL's big problem to me is it going to put the revenue growth and making money ahead of the health of the game? Now, you might say, well, those are connected, and they are. But do they want to worry more about plopping a team in London, or do they want to worry more about fixing officiating, fixing the game, and that includes injury stuff, all that stuff? That's where I think fans, when they do get angry about the NFL, it's not so much the stupid protests and all that stuff. That didn't affect it at all, really. What it is to me is the way the game is played, the rules are played, and how people play it. That is the big issue for them. So the NFL has a decision to make. Are they going to fix the game? I think the TV discussion we had last interview was about that, which is like, okay, now they're going to make the product more available. That's helping fix the game, right?
Yeah.
The other sports, I think, are going to be a distant second. In fact, I didn't know this. Do you know when football became the most popular sport in America? What year would you guess? David Stepanian, our engineer, says 1986.
I was going to say 94.
Oh, okay.
I go with the 70s.
What year in the 70s?
Ooh, 77.
No, 72.
Wow.
Yes, believe it or not, baseball was number one from 1948 through 1960. And then football overall was number one in 1972. Wow.
So from 60 to 72 was
12 years. For those of us math challenged, right?
Who?
But no, the point, well, who? Who's on first?
Oh. Who?
What's on second? No. So anyway, but that's the point. I think the NFL and what it's doing, I think the one big opportunity for the NFL, and they did it in little bit of pieces, but they have not done it significantly, is marketing appropriately and correctly to women. They've tried to do it with the Breast Cancer Awareness Month and all this stuff. They have not hit the sweet spot yet. They need to do that. Women in general are amazing football fans. I happen to marry a woman mostly because she was a football fan and she knows the game. She's not just watching to watch. And I think, having these football 101 clinics, okay, but that almost insults women who actually know about football, right?
And that's the fine line you have to draw with something like that, because if you have something like that and there's 100 women there, 70 of them may know nothing, and you try to do something for them, and then the other 30 are just completely torn. And it's like that, it's like that with anything. It's like I used to be a bartender. We'd go to wine tastings and stuff like that, and I'd be sitting there beating my head on the chair for the first hour because I'm like, I'm not 7. I know what wine is, but you have to do things like that when you're introducing people.
It's a disconnect.
Stuff.
You need to separate them. Put them in groups.
It's hard. It's hard because there is no sweet spot because you're going to have such a diverse group.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, there's no fiddle in the middle, right? I mean, it's like you have people on both sides really experienced and some people who don't have any. But I think that's what the NFL needs to do is they need to make the product more available, make the television more available. They are marketing to younger people better than they have in the past. And I think one of the biggest marketing engines that they have, and I've seen it firsthand locally. And we had the national championship of NFL flag was in Henderson, and the team was on our show on Super Bowl Sunday. They, with the flag program, because so many parents are concerned with their kids playing tackle football at a younger age, the NFL flag program has helped grow the market for younger kids to be involved with the NFL, and I think that's a huge part. But how did you guys, what was it for you with the NFL? How did you get connected to it as kids?
Well, for me, it was my mom. She was in Chicago, huge Bears fan, watched football every Sunday, every Monday, and I think that's probably why, we had the discussion earlier about the NFL and its popularity. It was available on the 3 channels that you had back in the day, right? And so Monday night games, Sunday afternoon games, it was a football household with my mom, and she was a huge Bears fan, obviously, and I just gravitated to the Raiders for what odd reason. In the 70s, they were just...
Well, and that's why when people say, and I understand that the quality of the football isn't always great, but when people say that we have too much football, it's not that. It's more of too much bad football and the way it's brought to you. I mean, and the timing. So I think that that's another discussion. But good discussion, guys. I appreciate it very much. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, Kelly's Corner.
Hey.
We don't know what the heck he's going to talk about, but it'll be something interesting. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Celebrate Earth Day at Greenfest's 10th anniversary on Saturday, April 20th from 10 to 5 at downtown Summerlin. It's free to...
40. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back. Thanks for spending part of your Sunday with us, talking Raider football and some other interesting things like TV and marketing and the draft, you name it. That's why we're here, try to bring you great content, great guests all the time. And one of our best guests, and he is, you know how Derek Carr, guys, is the Raiders franchise quarterback? I know some people don't want to hear that, but it's true. You know how he's your franchise quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Wally from Henderson is our franchise caller.
Yes.
And Wally is on the line. What's up, my man?
Hey, Gully, I appreciate the info on the stadium, but there's one thing. Nobody's talking about the elephant in the room, that idiotic location.
Why do you think that?
We were in Phoenix this year to watch the Raider game in Phoenix. It was a nightmare to get in and out, but at least when you got out, the Ubers couldn't get in because the roads are blocked for traffic. But at least they had cool restaurants there where we could go hang out and have some drinks and eat. It took us 2 hours before our Uber driver could get in there.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
That stadium should never been built there. Could you get a guy on to talk about what everybody's on the wrong side of the freeway? What, everybody's going to stand there in September when it's 100 degrees outside waiting for their stupid bus to take them to their parking lot?
I think they could just walk across the street back over to the Strip.
Yeah, well, but Wally, I hear what you're saying, but here's a couple things. Number one is, and if you go, we'll post it up on our website maybe. There's documents from the Stadium Authority Board that show kind of the transport plan. They're going to have coverings. They're going to have things like that'll help with that. I think the location, a lot of people talk about it because it's smaller, right? You're talking about 66 acres. But if you look at the stadium they built in Minneapolis, I know it's a downtown location. It's a different type of city, but there's no land there either. You go to Chicago, you have to park at the McCormick Center and have to take shuttles all the way in as well. So I don't. It's not much different now. We have the heat, but outside of September, once you get past the end of September-ish, we're actually cooler from a temperature than Miami, than New Orleans. So while I understand what you're saying, and there will be lots of congestion, and it will be bad, especially at first, because they're going to have to work out the kinks, I think after a while it'll work. But I wanted the stadium to be at St. Rose Parkway and I-15 on that 140-acre lot there, but I guess that was not in the plans.
They should have put it next to the NASCAR track.
Yeah, they talked about that. It's just so far out from the center of the city, and they wanted it to be. They're obviously counting on a lot of people coming in from out of town, not only Raider fans but also visitors fans, and they wanted. This is part of the deal to get it. It's tourism dollars that they're spending. That tax is tourism, so they want to keep it there. Now I know the track is out there. The track is a different monster in itself. But I think that was the thinking. But we'll definitely get a guest on that'll go through that with you for sure. I'm working on that. It's taking a little bit of time because they're so focused on building.
All right, I'm not going to cut into Kelly's time anymore. So,
oh, that's okay. It's just Kelly, Wally.
Yeah,
Wally, keep going.
Guy down, okay?
Yeah, man, you got it. And Wally, we like you better than Kelly anyway. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Wally. Take care, my man. All right. Kelly's Corner now. Go, Kelly. Take it, brother.
All right. Yeah, well, it's funny because, like, in the last segment earlier, you mentioned that, ask Chaz, how did you get into football and everything? And, I didn't get a chance to hop in there. But for me, it was gambling. It was, I was 15 years old.
Well, at 15 years old?
Yeah.
Who gambles at
15 years old
oh my gosh.
in Indiana betting on football games. I know it's hard to believe. It happens all over the country.
There's no illegal gambling in this country.
And that's why I love the fact that you're seeing ESPN and you're seeing all these shows that are now like, you know what? Screw this, having our head in the sand. Yeah. We can't act like this doesn't happen anymore. And the best part about it is seeing friends of mine and stuff that are in the gambling industry on ESPN, on podcasts, on all this stuff. And I'm like, 10 years ago, this was the most taboo thing. You could never do this. And now they're finally coming to the point that this is going to be mainstream. It is going to be something that everybody does. It's not this little hole in it's not this little hole in the desert where people do these things.
Back alley, shady.
And it's good. And I'm interested to see where everything starts to go. Because it's like everything else, there's going to be an escalation. It's we're doing this, so this other company or these other people, they have to do this, they have to do this. And competition, the best way to fine-tune a product is with more competition. So now we get to see where gambling evolves.
No, absolutely. And I think that what's surprising to me, Kelly, is the stigma is gone for most people. Not for everybody. There's still some people out there who don't believe in it and think it's bad for sports. There's still some networks who won't show lines. And to me, they are becoming, in essence, what newspapers were when they refused to look at online classifieds, and then a thing called Craigslist came along and killed them. It's here. It's legal. It's going to spread. It's going to take a few years because you have to regulate it and all that stuff. And a lot of people in Nevada who know how to regulate gaming are going to make a lot of money in other states as they consult on that. But to me, it is huge, and all the sports, with the exception of baseball, who continues to be the big holdout, all of them are starting to learn that, you know what, this is going to, not only does it bring in money, but it helps us grow our fan base, Chaz.
Yeah. Well, I still kind of feel like it's taboo, and it's funny to talk about it because I'm in different leagues, different, yearly competitions. And then when you start talking about on the air on the TV, and I'm like, what? I saw that show on ESPN, and they do an hour-long show about gambling, and it's like, wow, they really, is this really happening?
Kelly and I were having a cigar the other day, and I said that I was like, man, it's so weird. I hadn't seen the ESPN show yet, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, it's great. I like watching it. It's entertaining. It's good information. Doug Kazarian's a UNLV grad as well, but it's like, wait a minute, is somebody going to come out of the woodworks and arrest us, or what's going to happen here?
Yeah, it's like I said, Preston that they have on the show, Sports Cheetah. He's a friend of
the big beard.
Yeah, he's like a friend of a friend and stuff like that, So it's like, I know this guy, he's on ESPN now. It's like, really? He's like, we were just hanging out at the Hilton watching the national championship game, BSing the other day. Now he's on ESPN.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember, like, when I was in college, this is in 97 to 2000, that's when I really started betting sports. And I was like a pariah, and I was like the bad person because I was the one who was gambling, I'll never forget Randy Moss's rookie year, the Monday night game he tore up Green Bay. The first time I had a bet in the thousands of dollars on a football game, and like I wouldn't let anybody in my dorm, like I'm by myself in my dorm room watching this game and just watching Minnesota tear them up. And I'm like, well, there's tuition for the next.
And most sports fans can always recall the games that they had bets on. Like, you talk about this game, that game. They go, oh, yeah, well, this one time, and I had, and you won't believe, and they've always got a bad beat story.
Well, everybody's got a bad beat story, and it's always fun to hear stuff like that because, we all remember the losses more than you remember the wins because they hurt worse.
Yep. Oh, they hurt.
But, every bad beat story, someone's got a worse one. You're not the only one. Don't feel special.
Yep.
All right, guys, we close off another show. That's going to wrap it up. Make sure you stay connected to us. Visit silverandblacktoday.com, the website that started it all. Follow us on Twitter @silverblacktoday. Check us out, the podcast as well. For my co-host Kelly Kreiner, Chaz Osborne, and engineer David Stepanian, we sign off, Raider Nation, but we never say goodbye. Thanks for listening. Until next week, Of course, may the autumn wind, although now it's a little bit of summer heat, desert wind. People get mad when I say desert wind instead of autumn wind. They think it's like a slight on the Raiders. It's not. But anyway, thanks for being with us, guys. We will be connected with you online, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
See what can happen at Chapman?